Here we are inside the trunk, and it is definitely some water here. It's been raining for some time. And it's coming from the side. That's the area that I've been trying to fix. So here's the separation between the two. You can see she's not pretty. There I can see where it's coming in. It's just a little tiny drip. Have a look inside here. There's like a 3-holed little drain. So this bit of rubber here, I want to try and push it all the way so that it gets to about here. By the way, if you ever lower the roof without the engine on, be very careful because it will do this by itself. And what's happening is the water is running along the roof and it's getting down into this joint here. And down here typically, this is where I get a little bit of water. So here's that same rubber. If you get a business card and you can slide it inside there, you know you've got it nice. So you want to know you got water in the trunk? It's really easy. You don't even need to look in the trunk. There's 3 clues that gives it away. Number 1, have a look at your windscreen. If you get in the car and there's mist on your windscreen, that's a good telltale sign there's a lot of moisture in the car. As the car gets warm and the interior heating, the moisture from the trunk is then going to start settling on cold surfaces like your glass. And likewise in the back there, same idea. The second way you know there's water in the trunk or inside your car is you can smell it. As soon as you come in, you get that sort of musty smell. That's a good telltale sign that you've had water that's been sat and it started to go a bit stagnant. And thirdly, if you have a look at my previous video just here, I talk about how I've put a little cheap little mod that costs less than 10 bucks and it will save you thousands of pounds. Check it out. It's a water sensor that sits in the trunk of that boot and it sets off an audible alarm. And ironically, about 3 days after I did this video, it came on. You can hear it, it's coming through. So if I hear that, I've got water in the trunk. I know the trunk's been getting steadily worse. I had actually sealed it about 4 or 5 years ago, but you know, with the frost and the cold weather, the seal started to get worse and worse and worse. But don't worry, we've got this. I'm going to show you what I did, and also internally, if you've got water coming in the back here and you see that the back of your driver's or your passenger's side, the carpet's getting a bit wet and you wonder where it's coming from, that is actually coming from the hinge of the lid when it goes down. And there's a little tip. Again, have a look at this video here. There's a screw which you wouldn't even know was there. It's hidden. And by adjusting that screw, you're going to be able to bring the 2 surfaces tighter together. And what that does is A, it stops the rattle, and B, it causes it to be a nice proper seal, and it will prevent that water from getting in and dripping down behind your seats there. Anyway, enough talk. Let's start with the trunk. We've got this. Let's get into it.
Let's move on, 'cause it's time to move on.
Now, it's raining today, but nevertheless you can see evidence here. If you look at the back here, there's water droplets coming down, and if you look at this here, this is wet. This little flap here, I'm almost thinking they've put this on purpose, because just here, this join here, which is where the roof separates from the side part of the folding roof, is a telltale sign where it can leak. So the water actually comes down and you can see it drips onto this here. In the past, I've actually put a container on here, just put a bit of rubber band around it to capture the water, and it's amazing actually how much goes into that. But it's running down the window and it actually tracks through underneath and drops on there. So looking from above here, you can see now this is actually just a piece of extra rubber that I put in there, because over the years, where this gets pushed down by the roof, it's starting to flatten, and I found that the water comes down and then rides over top of them and goes into the car. And the idea was that I was trying to separate it so that the water actually behaves when this rubber was new, a little bit like to the side here, and it goes over and then into this channel, which is what it's supposed to do. Also, if you look here, this is where I've sealed it. This isn't rubber, this is actually an adhesive. It's like a silicone sealant, but it's actually an adhesive sealant, which is different. It's a lot more robust and it's used for automotive applications. It's called Sikaflex, and it works in the water as well, so it will set in water. But nevertheless, all the way along here, this was then taken out and I resealed it. Also, underneath this rubber there's a lip, and that tends to get a bit rusty, so I may need to take all of this off. This side is getting particularly bad here, where the water is actually starting to get behind the seal that I've done there. I did actually put a temporary seal on, I just used a bit of epoxy, but it started to leak there. Another thing to check is inside here there's a little drain hole. You can just about see it. If I clear this just there, if you have a look inside here, there's like a 3-hole little drain, and that can get clogged up with dirt. So as well, making sure that that's nice and clear. Try pouring some water in just to make sure that it runs out, and you'll see that it comes out through the bottom. Here's the one on the right hand side, for example. You can see it's absolutely choked up. Can't even see down there. So I'm going to get some water and just make sure that's nice and clear. So that's the exit there. So you know, if you can see the water coming out there, the tube going down through the side fender there is all good. Let's do the same on the other side. Yep, that all looks good on the left hand side as well. Okay, so that's those 2 channels cleared. Let's have a look at the seal now. So here's the problem here, that it runs over the 2 of them, whereas it should be going in this gap here. And it might just be that I need to increase that gap. So as you can see, I've got the hose up there running off it, but you can see how it runs over the top here. And yet, if I give this a little bridge by putting a screwdriver in, it seems to allow the water to go in this gap here. So here's that area there, and it should be a tight seal on the top, but I actually think it slightly gets underneath it, just here. The idea is that the water is supposed to get pushed along either over the top, down the metalwork, or it goes into this hole here. It then works its way along, and then it goes out through the drain that we cleared earlier. But just here, this recess where the rubber is, the water can get underneath it, and I need to try and make sure that the seal is good. All the way along here seems fine, the seal seems tight, and the water then just travels over onto the bodywork. But the same here on the other side, I can feel that there's a slight indentation. Now if I run this along here, just here there's a gap, and then it's tight again. So I'm going to see what I can do with this area here. I think it's just years of it being pushed down. It's not too bad on that side, but the other side's worse. Now this side, there's definitely a bigger gap just there. So let's see what we can do and see if we can stop the water coming in this bit. At least I don't have to do the whole seal, which I'm quite happy about. So what I'm thinking of here, if I put a tube in here, it will give this a bit more rigidity. It will firm it up and push it harder against the underside of the trunk. That's my plan anyway. This is where it separates, so make sure that that's all in good condition when the roof actually separates. I'll show you that now. By the way, if you ever lower the roof without the engine on, Be very careful because the pneumatics and hydraulics will do this by itself. You need to have the engine on, otherwise you're going to get that happening and you can get a finger trapped in some of those hinges, so be really careful. So make sure you start the engine. Whenever you're working and the roof is in the half up, half down position, be very careful about any of this mechanism, because if you haven't got the engine on and you lose the pressure on the pump, it will close just as it did a minute ago by itself. In the manual it actually talks about placing a block between here and here to stop that from happening. So here's the separation between the two, and it's this area here which I resealed, and actually it's holding up pretty good. I was going to redo it, but I don't think that's the cause. I think the cause is where the water is getting underneath on the top of this rubber, underneath the trunk, and then working its way down onto these little side bits here. So you can see how damp it is, and that's just for when I've opened the roof. So I'm going to give all these rubbers a nice clean as well, and see what I'm doing then. Okay, whilst we've got this roof in the half up, half down position, have a look just here. This is the adjustment I was talking about for when you get water that can leak behind your seats. If you look very carefully, you can actually pull down this plastic cover on the outside, just like that. And just here, there's a little nut, a little 10 milli. And if you undo that or tighten it up, you can go clockwise or counterclockwise. And what it does is it brings this rubber stop either further towards the car going down, or it goes back up. And if you get it just right, then this seal here, this joint here, will go tighter together. And what's happening is the water is running along the roof and it's getting down into this joint here. Again, make sure just in here there's a drain hole and it goes all the way down, so make sure that that's clear. And as I said, by adjusting that little screw, you'll bring these two tighter together. It'll also stop the rattle if you've got a rattle. You probably find over time when the car moves around that that gap's got a bit too big. A little tip to make sure you got it just right is to place a little business card just between the rubber and the metal support that it hits inside the car, like this. So here's that same rubber. It's actually on the other side, but obviously they're the same. If you get a business card and you can slide it inside there and it grabs, then you know you've got it nice. If there's a gap and it slides in really easy, then it's too loose and you need to move this rubber stopper counterclockwise so that it will go harder against this stop. If it's too tight on the opposite side, in other words, it's making contact before, say, the other side, what's going to happen is that joint that you saw on the outside, water can seep in, and it's that which then comes down, trickles down, and starts dripping on the inside and goes on your carpet behind your seat there. So I carry a little 10mm spanner just in the glove box, and all you got to do, you can actually get to it from here, just get it into there and turn it one way or the other. It'll make sense when you see it. You turn it down by hand and then just nip up that nut, lock it in place, see if the water comes in, take it for a drive, see if the rattle stops, and just do it a few times until you get it. And carry a little business card and you can check to see it's nice and secure and that the gap there is just right. So here's the gap on the outside. This is the joint where the water is slightly seeping in, and by adjusting that nut it creates a tighter seal. Another little tip you can do is actually just run a bit of Vaseline between the two surfaces, and it just gives it that little bit of impermeable barrier as well. Mercedes actually do a full template. Oh, look at this, it's all starting to perish off. Oh, she's getting old, she's getting old. So So Mercedes actually do a template that fits into this opening, and you put it in place, put it in the aperture, and you bring it down, and then you use a gauge to see if there's any gaps, and it should be, there's a tolerance of I think about 1.5 mil, but you should be able to have the same gap all the way around. And they use that template because just here where this trouble area is the key part of the joint, obviously, where the roof is hinging, and this is where the leaks can be. So having that template there is how you actually adjust it. But if you haven't got the template, obviously I haven't got it, you can still do it yourself, just with a little bit of trial and error. And down here, typically, this is where I get a little bit of water. I mean, it's hardly anything to worry about. It's usually just depends if it's winter time and the materials get you know, a little bit colder, they start to shrink slightly, so I find the water every now and then comes in, but it's nothing to worry about. Right, so I've decided what I'm going to do. It's a quick, simple fix. It might save me a hell of a lot of time, but underneath here, where the underside of the trunk boot meets the top of this rubber, just here where I'm getting that bit of a trouble area, and it's only about 0.5 mil, but it's just enough for that water to seep underneath. I was thinking, what can I do with the rubber? How can I make it kind of squish up more and be firmer? But she's 20 years old and it's just got softer. I mean, I don't want to replace the whole rubber. So the simplest thing I thought is in this rubber here, this is where it separates. It's got a bit flat just at this one spot here. So I'm going to use some of this tube and I'm going to push it inside with the idea that it's going to keep its form a bit better. I'll chop it off obviously to the right size, but then hopefully that'll then push a little bit firmer and increase the diameter so that it's tighter fit against the underside of the trunk. That's the plan anyway. So let's cut this. I'll probably want to have up to about here. Let's cut that there. Going to have that sat in there like that. See if that works. Might cut it a little bit shorter. Actually no, it's there. It's like where the rubber gets a bit thin here, so I want to try and push it all the way so that it gets to about here. That's the plan. Oh, there we go. Right, that's in. I wonder if that's too much now. It's definitely prouder. It's definitely prouder of the surface. So I'm going to close the boot trunk and see how it looks. So what I'll do is I'll close the trunk, I'll leave the light on and I'll pour some water and we'll see if there's any water that actually then trickles down inside. That's probably the best idea. So this bit of rubber here, the shore hardness, the stiffness of it was a little bit too dense and the diameter of it was too much. So I found this tube, which is just ever so slightly less diameter. I'm going to give this a go and see. see if it makes a difference, because I think that was getting pushed up too much. So if you look here, this part where it's sagging down, just here, is a lot more proud. It's level now, and I'm hoping that that's going to give a better seal to the underside of the trunk. So if you compare that to the other side, you can see that that side dips down. It's not much, but that little mill there, that's enough for the water to track underneath. So I'll put a piece of pipe on that side and see how we get on. I'm just taking it to that join there. That should be okay. So what I decided to do is use this product here. This is Sikaflex. It seals in moisture. It's best to try and get it as dry as possible, but it will cure in a moisture environment. And it's specifically used, well, you can see on the image on the front there, for the automotive industry. I use this to seal on the bottom of the window, and it's held up really, really good. When I first did this video, I thought that's where it's going to be leaking, but actually I found that it's where that little drain tube is, and it's just dripping through, thanks to when I put the camera inside and put the water on. So I'm going to seal it with this. I'm going to just put a nice little fill around there, and then we'll see what happens. Hopefully that will sort my problem. Yeah, definitely if I move the tube I can actually see water starting to bead out, so see if I can get this as dry as possible, and then I'm going to put a nice little seal around there with the Sikaflex adhesive. That's the plan. As I said, this stuff does seal in moisture, so we might be lucky. A little tip when you're using this, get a bit of WD-40 and it stops it sticking to your fingers. Also wear gloves. I think I can see where it's coming in. It's just a little tiny drip. WD-40 and it stops it sticking. Yeah, not bad. Yeah, you can get a nice little, now that I got the WD on there, it doesn't stick and you can get a much sort of smoother fill. Let's do the other side. So here we are inside the trunk, and it is definitely some water here, and it's coming from the side. That's the area that I've been trying to fix. It's trickling down, and this is what happens. It gets into this area, which is for the hydraulics for the roof, and I'm never too sure why they make it out of sponge. Maybe it's for noise insulation, but you can see she's not pretty. So I'm going to squeeze that out, try and get that to dry. Luckily I actually put some plastic over the top of this before, just to stop it from being soaked all the time. And there's one underneath as well. And this is your hydraulics, but you can see these electrical connections, and before I had a lot of water in the trunk. It came up to about here, and this connector got really wet. I had to clean it really well because I had verdigris, basically corrosion on the pins. I can smell it in here. So this is all wet as well. And inside, this is the main actuator brain for your roof, and also your air system for locking the doors, etc. Anything basically which works off the vacuum. So I've wrapped it in a bag, luckily, and then this bit of foam goes over the top, so that actually doesn't feel too bad. I'm hoping it'll dry. I'm going to dry out the residual water on the bottom. You can see down here I've got some water, but as I mentioned before, one of the most important things you can do if you've got a Mercedes SL is the following. Is underneath the little polystyrene toolkit, see the water I've got in here, look. Just here. This is one of the most important things you can do. There's a hole there, and the reason there's a hole is because I took out one of the drain plugs. There's a drain plug at the back. That drain plug allows the water to go somewhere. Now I'm parked on a slight hill, which is why I got a bit of water here, but if I was level, that water has now got an exit. It doesn't allow water in because underneath it there's a heat shield, and no water is going to splash in. I've never had any problems with that, but importantly it lets the water go somewhere if you have problems like this where there's water in the trunk. And just here, this little sensor, if you listen, that there was my alarm that went off, and it's because I got water in there, and it serves exactly the purpose that I wanted, was to give me that early warning to go and have a look at the seal. Oh, it's getting dark, it's raining again. I had a look in the trunk, I put the camera in there, shut the trunk, had the light on, and you can see from the video that when I put the hose on there wasn't any leaks coming through, so that's encouraging news. I've completely taken everything out the boot, the trunk, cleaned it all down, dried it all down. I actually removed the little foam cover that goes on top of the roof hydraulics, and it hopefully will dry a lot faster in here, especially being down the footwell. I'll put the heat down there. But yeah, I'll keep an eye on it, see how it goes. I'm really glad I put that little 9-volt sensor in there, that little mod that I did, which triggered and did exactly what I thought. It's been in there for about 3 years, and it's been on the same battery, and it's completely ironic that I did a video, and about 5 days later, with the heavy rain, it was beeping away at me. So yeah, I'm really chuffed that that worked. For the sake of what, $10? Do it, buy it. There's a link down below. Get yourself one from Amazon, please. Put it in your car. Even if you haven't got an SL, stick it in a car where you might get issues with water in the trunk, especially with all the electrics. And that thing, that costs you what, $9 or so. It's going to save you hundreds, because you're going to get that early warning, which is what you need to try and sort the problem out with the leak. So look, I really hope, I really do, I really hope this has helped you. And if it does, and this is your sort of thing, be kind enough to give me a little subscribe. Amazing. It really helps the channel. I'm only a small YouTuber, but I love trying to save people money, trying to help them, and maybe think about things that perhaps you hadn't thought of before, taking a different direction. I'm an engineer by trade, and generally that's how my brain works. So if I can help you, save you money and time, that's what this channel is all about. Look, thanks for watching. If you like this sort of thing, have a little look at this playlist here. This is all about different car fixes that I've done. See you on the next one. Bye for now.
Let's move on, 'cause it's time to move on.